Hello, hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is our third session, so it's our weekly hour to discuss career and tips for college. So today our topic is going to be careers in IT. The goal is to kind of have two professionals who work in the IT space come share their experiences there and then answer some questions that you guys have. So we really want you guys to be proactive. Please, as we go through the topics, ask as many questions as you want, stop us whenever you want, and our goal will be to get through as many questions as possible. All right. So I wanted to start off and say, introduce myself. My name is Zohaib Kumar. I'm a CPA, work in accounting. So Sami, I'll turn it over to you. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. Hi, can you hear me? Great. Sami Rafiuddin. I am a senior product manager at Spotify. And I guess the questions here, I went to school at NYIT. And fun fact, I own an ATV and I like to go out and ride.
Very nice. Thank you. All right. Shiraz, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Shiraz Kumar. I work in LogicWorks, a cloud consulting company, and I went to school in Queens College, and I did a program also just to learn cloud computing. And fun fact is, I'm really into MMA, UFC.
Okay. Very nice. Thank you. All right. So, as it's the month of Ramadan, I've been asking everybody, can you guys share an experience of being a Muslim, going to college, or working as a professional, and how you manage the challenges of that, or the benefits of that? Sami, do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. Um, I mean, I think it's a little different now that, I mean, I've been working from home since last year, about March. So it's a lot more flexible now. But even in our office, we do have like break rooms and like quiet spaces where you can pray. And we actually have like a Muslims group there that we organize to make sure there's like janamazes on each different floor and whatnot. So it's very convenient now being home. To be honest, I feel like having the ability to pray Salah on time, but we're in the office, it was like difficult to try to find the right time when you could take a break from meetings and workshops. So yeah, I think it's been really good. As far as like in school, I think it was a bit difficult, but that was many years ago as well. I think things have changed quite a bit now.
Yeah,
So places to pray and food is plentiful now. So yeah, Shiraz, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, I think I work from home also, so it's way easier. But just in general, I feel like a lot of companies are very accommodating and they're open, but it's like, sometimes I just feel very like nervous to ask or something, but usually they're very open and they like when you ask for like, extra hour or Jumma or something like that.
perfect. Yeah, I have the same. I have the same uh, background now with work from home. It's much easier to be home. You can pray regularly. You can adjust your schedule. And what I do is I block off prayer times on my calendar so people won't even they can't even schedule a meeting at that time because Zohar pretty much stays the same all year round. So I'll block that off and I'll block off an hour later. And sometimes they'll say, "Oh, you have a lot going on in your schedule. We really can we?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's you can move that around. That well, I'll work with you. I can work around that meeting and stuff." So just and then a fun story about that also is I ended up going to a lunch with a client when I was at PwC. So we had a big business lunch for the client. The only time that work was during Ramadan, and then everybody was there eating except me. And they were like, "Oh, we feel bad eating without you. Is it okay? Why did you schedule it for today if you were fasting?" I'm like, "I'm fasting for the whole month. This is the only date that worked." And then we just had fun with it.
Yeah,
It was fine. Okay.
yeah. I think praying is a bit easier in the office than doing wudu. I think wudu is the tricky one.
A tough
But I
one,
know
yeah.
like I think it's Pepsi or some company I know also has like wudu stations in their corporate office. So yeah, like Shara says, definitely a lot more accommodation than in the past.
Absolutely, Michelle. All right. So perfect. So let's start talking about our main topic, careers in IT. So I always hear this term IT, I get a job in IT, I want to work in IT. Back in the day, that used to mean like things like creating websites, graphic design. It's evolved a lot, in the last 20 years. What what should people think about when a parent hears their child saying, I want to go into IT, I want to do IT, or someone who's in high school but still hasn't got into the nuances of what is IT? Can you give us like a framework that can kind of guide us of what is IT? What are the same major components of it? What does it mean to work in IT?
I think for me, it's the equivalent of saying I want to do medicine or something very generic. Like you said, in the past, there was a very maybe more scoped out area, but it's a very genericized word to say IT because it's such a huge umbrella now, and there's so many different facets of technology, and even within IT, like there are constructs of just people managing as well, not just technology itself. So it can be very broad, where it could be engineering, you could have IT functions and finance, um, a lot of different things.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Saying you work in IT is like saying you work in computers. Uh, what I think as IT like technology is progressing, I think y like at the base level you're expected to know way more or just be aware of it. So um, it's just a lot to like at least be aware of.
Okay, perfect. So that's a good highlight for us to be cognizant of. IT is not a one name like one thing that everybody can do. It's like not one thing you major in college and you graduate and the career is IT. It's so many different things. Perfect. Um, so we got a question in, and says, "What do you guys think of the WGU Masters in Cybersecurity? Are you guys familiar with that? Uh, and do you guys have any thoughts on that?" I'm not sure what WGU
Uh,
stands for. Is it maybe the
yeah,
name of a
I looked
college
up
or a
some.
university?
That's what it looks like. I mean, I just did a quick Google search, Western Governors University, but everything cybersecurity in general is a very hot space right now. If you think of how many assets live in the cloud these days and what it takes to keep those things secure, it's again, like there's a huge depth in security in general. Like there are a lot of security engineers that are working in many different parts of uh, of any career at this point. Like you think of the banks, there are tons of security and fraud experts that work within there in medicine, the systems that they have and the sensitive data that they own. So I think anything in cybersecurity, again, like you have to maybe explore more like a Google search of jobs in cybersecurity or cybersecurity engineers or something like that, which will give you some more context as far as what exactly you're looking for.
Shiraz, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I know. For my company, we're just a cloud consulting company, but just in our company alone, I know like just having a security certification in AWS is very sought after because of audits and stuff like that. So um, I think it is just it's like a nice bonus to have, even if you don't want to specialize in that.
Okay. Another question came in. What's the difference between private and public school when it comes to the IT field? Schools like NYIT, Queens College, Stony Brook, uh, NYU, Polytech. Any thoughts on, is there a difference? Are some colleges inherently better because they're private versus public? Any good programs that you guys have heard of, or any of your friends or experiences you guys have with those schools and their programs? Sami, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. I'm like, should you go first? Should I go first? Um, uh, I think like the biggest call out to me with private versus public is cost, not so much content or learning from those institutions. I think it depends on what you're looking for. I mean, um, Stony Brook is a public school and it's an exceptional school. as the other schools you have mentioned as well. So I think for me personally, I feel like cost is more of what private and public mean. But again, like there are certain schools that maybe specialize more in finances or the financial district kind of careers versus technology. So just because New York Institute of Technology says technology there doesn't necessarily mean they're only a tech school. Like there are a lot of people that go to NICOM as well for medicine. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, that's very generic
Okay.
answer, I guess.
Shiraz, you want to add anything from your own experiences? You've been to, I think, Queens College. You also took classes at City College, which has a
Yeah.
strong engineering program. Any thoughts on the quality of the education at City College?
I think both were very good, but I mean, it varies what professor you're gonna get or whatever, like, how good the professors or whatever. I would say a lot of these colleges have like listed out their curriculum or what like the path is, and I think how minute you could get with IT, like it's beneficial if you're interested just to look at like the different classes each college provides, if that's like a deciding factor.
Okay, perfect. I would just add, so I think Sami had a good point around private versus public. The main thing is going to be the tuition cost, right? The other thing that Shiraz brought up is really good. Look at the career path and look at the actual curriculum and see what they teach. If you're really interested in doing like cybersecurity, but there's no cybersecurity classes available as part of their curriculum as an elective, that's probably not an ideal program for you. So again, it goes back to knowing what you want to do within IT. And that's very hard coming right out of college because you guys haven't taken classes in those different areas. You haven't learned coding. Sometimes you do, sometimes you haven't. And you haven't seen what it's like to work in the different areas of IT. So it's hard to decide in the front. Usually in your first 2 years, I know in business, I'm not an IT person, but generally you get a little bit of exposure to all the different types of like business courses like marketing management. Is it the same with IT? You guys have taken courses the same, you get a little bit of exposure to everything and then you can decide what you want to focus on.
Yeah, I know when I was going to school in City College of New York, they have like a big engineering program, and I think the first 2 years you don't necessarily like pigeonhole yourself into one type of engineering. You like get exposed to everything.
Sami, do you want to add anything? Any thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, I think you have the ability to go to Google and search for anything, as well as YouTube or Quora or anywhere else. So if you're curious about what type of career paths people have that maybe work at Google or whatever technology company you're interested in, maybe try to just do some research and see like where people started and then how their kind of career paths changed because it's the career path is very different for many people. They start like in very different places and end up very different places. So maybe that's a starting point is like try to see what type of career you like, do some Googling, try to understand like maybe there are many people that go to public schools of a specific kind in New York and end up getting jobs in like certain parts of the New York market.
Okay, perfect. And then the other thing I would say, I think somebody brought up a good point. Research the companies you want to work for. Look at what their requirements are for those entry level jobs. You can look up the entry level jobs on their website. You can see what degrees they require, what courses, what language skills, software skills they're asking for. See if that program is going to give you the skills. So don't just assume just because it's a public school versus private school, the privates are better than the public. It really depends. And then I would also say not every public school is the same either. Like, for example, Baruch's business program is generally considered to be better than Queens College's business program. When it comes to accounting, um, Binghamton is, as a SUNY, is considered better than some of the other SUNYs. So do your research, look at what people are saying, and also look at what companies recruit from those schools. Like every company recruits from different schools. They don't recruit from 100% of schools necessarily. Like from an on-campus recruiting perspective, they usually have relationships with certain schools. So if you really want to work for Google, figure out where Google recruits from. What are the colleges? If you really want to work for a mid-sized IT company, look at what schools recruit there, or work backwards. Figure out what school you're interested in, narrow it down, and look at what companies recruit from those schools. If none of the companies that recruit there are like that have a strong relationship with that school match up to what you want to work in, that's probably not an ideal program for you. So that's another way to approach, figuring out what school is right for you and what program is right for you. We got another question that came in. It says, the person's considering getting a job in IT is not easy. So considering getting a job in IT is not easy. Is it better to get a degree in engineering or computer science first for backup purposes? Any thoughts from you guys on that? Sami, I'll let you start first.
Sure. I think it's a bit broad, but kind of jumping around in like our agenda that we have kind of outlined here, there are quite a lot of resources now to at least get your feet wet in IT. Like the Google initiative, we'll probably talk about in here. You have like Microsoft, you have Coursera, and for coding specifically, you have Code Academy and DataCamp and Udemy and LinkedIn. And there's so many resources now that are free that you can get exposure to IT. As far as like a degree in engineering or computer science, I feel like that's like information systems, which is where I got my degree in, and having computer science are like very staple things. Like to understand the general constructs of engineering, everything kind of builds up from some sort of foundation or some basis. So I think those are solid degrees to get. But again, like look specifically, do research in IT, again, because it's a very broad strokes, like general word.
Okay. So Shiraz, do you have any thoughts on that? Does it make sense to get a degree? Or is it better to go maybe the certification route? So that's one of the topics that we had to discuss. Might as well talk about it now. I'll let you start out that topic, Shiraz. Does it make sense to focus on getting a degree first, a 4-year college degree, and then trying to get languages and skills on top of that or as part of that? Or is it better if you don't want to go for a 4-year degree, go to certification route and start working sooner? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so just to give some context, I was going to City College, then I transferred to Queens College, and then while I was taking a break from college, I did a program that was like New York City sponsored or something, and they taught cloud computing. So AWS was like the platform that they were teaching. Um, and from there, right after that, I got my AWS certification and I got an internship at my company, and then now I'm working there full time. But to get back to the question, I think it depends because I know like right now I don't have a full bachelor's degree and I have a job, which is like great, you know. But just speaking with some people, I hear like mixed things. Um, I know like generally new companies, startups, and like more of the IT field is less conventional, where they don't necessarily care about if you have a degree or not. But you know, if you work in like a financial sector, banking sector, or maybe even government jobs, like they hold that more to weight. So another thing also is like to get an AWS degree, at least the beginning certification. I would just say like if you're interested in something like that, it's not too difficult. Like if you study a month hard, like the actual test is like as difficult as like taking like a final or a midterm. So it's not like super complicated, and you don't need that much like knowledge beforehand. You could just like jump into it. So you could like go to college and maybe 1 month off you could do that, or on the side you could do that.
Perfect. Or during like a winter or summer semester, try to build that into it, build that into your schedule. Perfect. Sami, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I would echo more or less the same. I think like again, use Google as your resource. Go to Reddit, like do some digging online to see what you can discover, because there are so many resources at this point. Like Reddit is a really good source because a lot of people have conversation on there about what they've gone through, what they found useful, what they didn't find useful. Because at the same time, it can be a bit like jarring to see so many different places to go to learn. But if you can ask places like forums like this, or if you I'm big on LinkedIn and connecting with a lot of people, because you'll come across many people at many companies. So like if I'm curious at working at a different company, if I'm connected with people that are maybe connected with them, or I have direct connection, I can ask them as well, like, what does it look like to go through the recruiting process? And again, like online, you can find even recruiter questions and interview questions on any type of career at this point. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. So while we're on the topic, one of the things that we're going to talk about was the Google New Certification Initiative. Sami, do you want to talk about that initiative?
Sure. So I think it's a great initiative, and kind of what we're talking about for very entry level, and understanding like how and what you should get into without expending money and too much resources. It allows you to they've lowered the barrier to entry in getting into some sort of IT field. So I think with certifications, you have to also think about maybe university and college as well as certifications. Like many places that are offering both coursework and certifications are also businesses, and they're trying to sell certifications. So one caveat is be be uh, be cautious of the certifications that you're looking at as well, and any guarantees that places say, like if you get a certification you're guaranteed to get a job, because I don't think there are any guarantees in any jobs just based on the certification, and a lot of companies are just selling them because they'll make money from it. But I think what Google is offering again for free is that they're allowing you to get exposure to a few different subsets of IT, and Microsoft has those resources as well. And you have EDX from Harvard, which has like MIT and Berkeley resources. So I think it's great to at least explore a bit, and no cost, it's just some time.
Yeah, perfect. So to give us the background of the Google certification for people who might not be familiar with it, it's a program started by Google recently. And the concept is instead of doing it's almost like instead of doing a 4-year degree, Google wants certain skill sets for you to have, and they've broken them up into different certifications. So you can work on getting those certifications at low or no cost. Some of them I think are free, some are very low cost, and you can even apply for I think financial aid to get covered or scholarship to pay for them. So they are providing funding for that. Once you get the certification, it then you can add that to your resume, and then you can apply for jobs that need that skill set. So is it that Google will consider hiring you? Is it a guarantee that you're going to get a job at Google if you complete their certification? Can you help us kind of understand what that means?
I don't believe so. I think like there are certain career jobs that are listed in their portal where they accept the certification. So I think like the one of the larger initiatives of why these big tech companies are doing this is because there also is a shortage of technology professionals in the space. Things are growing so rapidly. Google is hiring thousands of people, as well as many other tech companies, Spotify included. So I think part of it is that they're trying to get people more into technology because they need more professionals in the industry. And again, like you have people that um, there are people that don't come from a background where they have a lot of ability to spend on education. Some people come from different backgrounds where they're maybe struggling a lot and they're trying to figure out what to do. And these certifications, these options allow you to get exposure again to little to no cost.
Perfect. And then I just put the link into the chat so you guys can go, and you can just Google it, Google certification. That'll be the link that pops up. You click on there and then you can navigate to see what the different types of certifications they're offering are, which ones seem right for you. You can evaluate the cost of each of them and how much the time commitment is. What they did a really good job of saying how long it would take you to complete this certification. So it's very easy to manage and figure out without overwhelming yourself. So that's again something brand new, just launched in the last, I think, 6 or 8 months that they came out with this. And it's a really good way to get skill sets that are relevant for some of the larger IT companies that are out there without necessarily committing to a 4-year degree at a university. So if you're in between careers, you're redeciding, hey, I'm working at Macy's, or I like it, it's okay, I'm making X amount of money, I'm happy, but I got a degree in like anthropology or psychology, but that's not going anywhere. I want to switch careers, but I don't want to go back for another 4-year degree or a master's. How can I switch careers into IT, which everybody's talking about all the time? This is one way of doing that. And the other link I put up is called Year Up. Shiraz, do you want to talk a little bit about Year Up, what that program is? It's similar to the program you completed with like a mix of internships and training. Can you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's I don't know if you have to be a New York State resident or a city resident, but in New York it's like state sponsored, and basically it's like I think 3 months or 4 months program where basically you work 9 to 5 and you dress professionally, and basically other than just like technical skills, they teach like how to conduct yourself professionally, how to like write communicate professional emails, or other things like that. So I think it's definitely one of the I think in the future we're gonna see more and more of these type of programs showing up, because like uh in a regular like 4-year college IT degree, you might have classes where it's a lot of theoretical stuff that you're never gonna implement. So I think these programs that are popping up, I really like them because like it's like straight to the point, and you just learn what you need, tools to like that you're actually going to implement in a job.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, so I'll elaborate on Europe. Europe is a nationwide program that was founded by a professional, and what he found was that people would be out of high school, they would start college, maybe they don't want to finish college, but then they have these great people, and then they're working at minimum wage jobs, mid-tier jobs. They're not really going anywhere. And then you have JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, some of the top companies that are looking for people who have like operational finance skills, IT skills, like help desk type jobs. And they're like, we need people for this. Like some you mentioned before, there's not enough people with these type of skill sets. So what they came up with this program, it's Year Up. It's 1-year program generally. And there's subsidiaries of it, like Shiraz mentioned, which are shorter, longer, etc., sponsored by different state and local entities. But Year Up as a core program is 1 year. 6 months, they're teaching you a skill set, either finance or IT. You get to pick which one you want to go into. Then the next 6 months, it's an internship. They get you to some of these top companies like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. You work for 6 months. While they oversee you, they teach you other skills and they monitor you and stuff like that. It's pretty strict. I heard that if you're late a certain amount of times or you don't show up, they kick you out of the program. So they're very strict. They really want professional people to be focused on this program. If you complete it and you do well and the company likes you, you get a full-time job there. And you're starting not like 100,000, you're starting at 50, 60, 70, 30, 40, depending on what industry you are, what state, city you're in. But it's a really good place to start. And then from there, you get additional certifications. You keep working harder and you can make a 6-figure salary eventually. So these are really good programs that are out there. People might not be aware of them. So we want to share them with the community, make you guys be cognizant of them, and you can take advantage of them. Which brings up a comment that Brother Raham Dean had on YouTube. He said he agrees with Shiraz about the certification versus college route. He said his brother got a job in IT without a degree. How can how do you think he can gain experience in IT before actually working? So, assuming he's in college, He's still doing his degree, college or high school, and he wants some IT skills. Is there an internship advice that you guys have? Is there other things that he can do? I've heard of hackathons. What can he do to get some real exposure that he can get on his resume for IT? I'll start with you, Sami, as always. You're the older one, so it's always you first.
Oh, okay. Um, so I think many companies offer internships. If you just go to their career portals, you can search for internships. There usually are summer internships and like maybe specific to certain segments in IT, there are internships available. So you'll apply to those and then you'll get selected based on whatever other criteria. And again, like maybe a way to look to see what the requirements are for even the internships is to go on there now and search and see like what do they look for to select people for internships. Outside of that, I think again, like you have these, you have YouTube, which has a ton of information from people that work in these jobs, which will probably give you a lot of hands-on information that you don't need to actually work there to do that. And then also like smaller companies typically are a lot more flexible in what the experience is required to get a job at. So maybe look at some smaller companies that have career. I think Zohaib, I think you're maybe talking. You're
No, I was talking to my daughter in the background. Sorry.
okay. So yeah, maybe try those few routes.
Shiraz, any thoughts on getting internships or applying? I know many students, like I teach at Queens College, and many students are like, it's very hard to get internships. It's scary. There's not that many internships out there. Any thoughts on just approaching the job application process? I know you went through that last year.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to approach it. I know that some of my friends who are currently applying for jobs, they they use they learn certain skills like React or something like that's just one as an example, but they learn certain skills and then they create like projects or labs from that, and then they put it on their resume. So if you're curious about something, like, it's not too, it doesn't take like super long time to learn one specific language or something like that, and then you could just like mess around in a lab or make a small project, and then you could just tell if that's for you, or you could put that on your resume as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I just put into the box, into the chat box, basically a link to JP Morgan's website. They have over 18 or 16 internships. Some of them are IT related, some are not. I also just put in a comment to share one of their programs, which is called a pre-internship. It's called Early Insights, where you work with, it's called Code for Good. You work with fellow coders to create innovative technology solutions for nonprofit organizations with the support of experts and mentors from the firm. So these are the type of programs that big companies are offering that are out there. You have to research this stuff. Like somebody said, the power of Google is it's there. It's at your fingertips. You have to kind of use it, and sometimes it's just a matter of just Googling internships in IT, and then who knows what's going to come up. And then Indeed has like a newsletter you can sign up for where you put like a zip code and it'll give you internships, and you can even tell it what type of internships. So you get an alert every week. And sometimes it's a numbers game. You just have to keep applying, and eventually someone will have an opening at the right time. And internships, sometimes they're offered all year round, but many of the times they're offered in like the early spring. They'll start recruiting for the summer, or the fall they recruit for the summer. So the summer internships for right now, a lot of them might already be filled at larger companies, but mid-sized small companies might have more openings. And the other thing I would say is, don't be afraid to use your relatives to help you out. I know one of my relatives, he graduated with like a psychology or anthropology degree, and he's going to be one of our speakers in the future. And then he ended up finding a relative who, or an uncle that he knew from his family friends that were in computing and in the IT area, and he learned like how to generate reports and like report logic and stuff like that from him. And then from that, he turned that into an internship and then eventually a full-time job. And now he's a director at a company, although his core bachelor's degree is not in IT at all, but he was so good at the skill set and learning it, and he kept up with learning new languages that he was able to get there through his hard work. So you guys can do that too. But it's about like taking those opportunities. Sometimes it's not always a bachelor's degree route that makes sense in IT. And even with, like Shiraz said, and Sami said, IT is changing very quickly. So sometimes the stuff you're learning, you might not even be able to apply by the time you graduate. And the skill sets companies look for are changing as well. Um, Going back to our agenda, so we talked a little bit about IT. It's very, very broad. What are, like, for people who have no idea about anything related to IT, can you just give us some ideas of what are some career paths like cloud computing or something like that that people can just kind of think about, and that way they have a basis of how to approach what careers make sense for them? Someone who's like a novice has no idea about the different areas within IT.
I think some of the largest career paths on IT revolve around engineering. You have so many different forms of engineering. You have machine learning engineers, you have data engineers, you have infrastructure engineers. Security is another one that's a big one. You have designers and developers, and kind of like what Shiraz was mentioning, I think it's React.js, like people that are into web development. You can easily find resources now to put together a site and see how it functions and see how it behaves. The same with app development, for example. Like you can sign up for a lot of resources from that you could do development on iOS or Android. So I think those are some of the bigger career paths in IT that I would say to explore. Engineering, I feel like every single company that exists at this point is in some form of a technology company, and they require engineers to build and maintain those systems.
Perfect. Thank you. Shiraz, do you want to add anything about from your experience, the different types of like certifications or different within like your experience that you've seen the different fields people can go into?
Yeah, there's a lot of fields in general, but more like in cloud engineering, you could go into like the same things as like security and all this other stuff. I would say like since I'm like going into like my first year into my second year professionally, like even I sometimes struggle. Like I don't 100% know what I'm gonna do, but um I just know like IT is like there's a lot of you could trial and error. It's a lot of you could see if you like something, you could research it for a couple weeks, try to see mess around with that language or that technology, see if you like it, if a lot of companies like it or not, and then you could tell if that's for you. I know a lot of times like you know before when you choose a profession it's like a huge commitment, but you could really experiment. It's not like you have to stick to one security. That's all I'm gonna do for the rest of my life.
Perfect. No, that's
Yeah,
helpful.
that's a really good comment, and I hope we had a chance to discuss that. Is that um, like many people that I mentor or I speak with are very apprehensive because they're like not sure exactly what Shiraz said. Like if I start doing this thing, I'm gonna do this forever, so I need to figure out my entire life now. And it's like going back to high school and like the guidance counselor and like you need to figure out your entire life then is not the reality. I think the reality is that like you get into something, you'll eventually find new things to explore and learn, and your path will kind of go in different directions, and you have to take risks, I think, as well. Like be open to being vulnerable and trying something that's out of your comfort zone, because technology is like you said is changing so rapidly that new career paths are coming up that nobody really knows what to do. Like machine learning and artificial intelligence wasn't a thing many years ago, and then somebody came up with something and started to go down that path, and now it's a huge industry. So be curious, take risks, and be a little vulnerable, and try things out.
Okay, perfect. And then just some basic questions about working in IT. And again, we said IT is a very broad area, right? So it'll vary. But from your own experiences, what are the average hours both of you work? And maybe you can just tell us what would you consider your where you work, what type of IT would you consider what you do? And maybe you can talk a little bit about it, and then we can ask some facts about it. So maybe at the basic, we'll start with like what what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What does that how does that fall within IT? So just so people have an idea of different fields within IT.
So I'm a product manager. So think of product like you can think of a product as a tangible product like an iPhone, for example, or you can think of a product like a subset of that product. So like the how you use a phone or maybe how you use a specific app and like how it behaves and how it looks and how it functions could be a product. The speaker in an iPhone that like you play music through or you talk through is a product as well. So like what I do is it can be considered kind of like a dark art where it's an intersection between technology and strategy and design, user behavior, and planning and execution and whatnot. So what I really enjoy about what I do is like I like to innovate and work with engineers and work with business stakeholders and users and understand what the problems are, like understand who the customers are for my specific product, and then what problems exist and how to solve it for them. Like what does a customer experience look like? I think outside of that, like the hours and what it takes, I think it's kind of up to you in IT. Um, it's super flexible. I think nowadays, like you can work whatever hours in some respects that you want. Typically, like the 9 to 5 doesn't really exist, especially in Ramadan right now. People are starting earlier. Many companies are distributed. Like we have a major part of the company is in Stockholm, which is in Europe's time zone, and then a big subset of the company is also in New York. So people tend to start early in their day and maybe end early. But it really depends. Like I spend time with my family and I take breaks throughout the day, which means I end up working a little later. But it's kind of flexible. You can work a few hours extra today and then take off early tomorrow. So I think the hours are really flexible.
Perfect. Shiraz, do you want to share your experience? What you do, what's that's considered, what are the hours like working in your field?
Yeah, so I work in a, like I said earlier, a cloud consulting company. So basically, like we take old companies that previously kept all their data in-house and we migrate them over to a platform like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. Um, and I work on the department where once they are migrated fully over, we manage them, we monitor them, we make sure that nothing goes wrong, and if they have any questions, we're here to help like 24/7. So I know like there's like for my company we have night people and day people, and then like it shifts every 2 months or whatever the time frame is. But I always like to like if you're familiar with the medical field, I like to compare my department like the ER room because like someone might come in the ER, their arm's broken, they're shot, whatever. And in my company, these people, the our clients come in and they're like, our database is down, our whole VPN is down, this or that. So I know in my company or in my role at least, a lot of people they come in for a couple years and they work a lot. Like I work like around 90 hours, which isn't too much, but it's more than like 80, which is like regular full time. So the point I was getting at is that um people come in for a couple years, they learn a lot, they get exposed a lot. They might be overworked a little, or they might, work more than a 9 to 5, but it's the experience that's more valuable than the actual like time.
Okay, perfect. That's helpful just to get a feel for your different careers, what you guys do, the hours that you guys work. And I think you mentioned 80 and 90 hours. That's probably over a 2 week span rather than a 1 week. You're not working 80 hours in 1 week, right?
Yeah, I'm going off
Okay.
my paycheck.
Okay, perfect. In
I was
terms
like,
of
I was like, I
travel,
hope not. That's a lot. That's a lot. It's a lot
in
of time.
in terms
One
of,
thing I wanted,
go ahead, go ahead.
sorry, one thing I wanted to add was like, it's maybe a prompt that we have for later in the chat, but something that seems to be relevant now is like, depending on where you work too, like if you're working in a startup, you tend to wear many hats and people work odd hours because they're building and scaling very quickly. And like Shiraz said, things break. So you have engineers that are on call and people panicking and getting systems back online. But it really depends. Like it's very broad again. Like if you're working in a specific role that's more maybe business facing, or maybe like Shiraz, like you're working in cloud, and maybe the teams that work with clients, they work around the client schedule, which is typically 9 to 5, and then maybe do some extra work after hours. But it really depends. To not scare people either, where you think you'll be working crazy hours, because there are some people that I think do work 50, 60 hours a week. Um, but you shouldn't feel that either. And also, if you are working in a company where you're getting burnt out, that's also not the norm. And you shouldn't feel like I need to learn how to work in this field, so I need to work crazy hours, because that's not fair also. And you shouldn't expect that in a company that values your time.
Yeah,
Perfect, thank you.
um,
Go ahead,
just
go ahead,
just to
Shiraz.
piggyback off what Sami was saying is I know my company's really small, so it's about like 150 to like 170 people, and like Sami said, you wear a lot of hats, so we do a lot of things just in my role. But I know like companies where the same type of my company, like they're a cloud consulting company, but they're way bigger, and something that I do 1 hour of my day is something that in that huge company, that's all they do. So, um, it just depends.
So one of the things you guys are telling me is then if you work in a more established IT company, you're going to be more specialized, more likely than a startup. In a startup, you are not going to be as specialized as much early on. So people who are weighing, should I work for a startup and get all those stock options? Should I work for a company like Google, Microsoft, etc., where I might not get as many stock options, but it's more stable. The pay might be higher. That's another thing for people to consider weighing is: do you want to be specialized, or do you prefer to do a little bit of everything? And what type of environment do you like to work in? Okay, so that's helpful. And then in terms of like average pay, so let's get to the dollar numbers. So everybody wants to know, what is the pay like in IT? Is everybody making $1 million, $500,000 who works at, like we hear Google, they make crazy salaries. What is the broader IT field like for the New York area? What's the average pay starting, maybe mid-year, mid-career, and then towards the end of your career? Any thoughts?
So I think maybe median salary based on some of the larger um, tech jobs that we're talking about, like whether it's in cloud or engineering, is probably like 75 to 150 range. And then you have bonuses and stock options and whatnot. But it really, it's a very broad scope. Like it's really hard to tell. Like entry level, you could be 50, 60 for a specific job, just being a very basic IT specialist, doing like IT support. But then Brother Zohaib mentioned, you could be working um, at like Google and earning three, four, five, six $100,000 being an engineer as well, and even more than that. And then like if you're in artificial intelligence, which are very like high prized in many companies, like, and again, like there's a shortage of those specific types of engineers, and now you have companies fighting for those resources as well. So a good resource is levels.fyi and salary.com, which you can visit, and you can kind of get an idea as far as the specific type of roles that exist, what the market is in like specific metro regions, like if you're looking at San Fran versus New York, what the pay differences are. But I think broad strokes in IT, I would say like 75 to 100, 150. And then again, like I would say if you're wanting to look at like high salaries, definitely consider engineering, because engineering seems to have a lot less of a ceiling, whereas maybe the career path in engineering, like you could be, again, like you have less of a ceiling in that, because you could be like a staff engineer, or you could be like a very um, high level engineer at a company, whereas other careers, maybe like you could be senior, and then you could be principal, and then you like maybe don't have that much career growth ahead of you.
Shiraz, what are you saying? You're newer out of college and out of your program and working. What are you seeing from your friends? What are the salaries like?
I think it's around, yeah, 75. It depends. It's really huge, the amount of like what you could get paid. I would say though that just sort of off tangent is like um you don't necessarily like need to be. You could have IT components in your job. So for example, like a lot of sales guys in my company, they're sales guys or they're business guys, but they have like a AWS cert or something like that, and that helps boost them, because even if they work for sales in a cloud company, they don't need to know that, but it just looks better, and it helps with salary or whatever.
Okay, that's a good point. So another thing to think about salary is, do you have a bachelor's degree? That could potentially play into it. At some companies, government jobs you mentioned care about that more, having a bachelor's or a master's degree. Other jobs, depending on the size of the company, might not care about that. And then what type of certifications you have. I've heard as you get more certifications, you can demand more pay or expect a higher pay increase. So that can be another component determining your pay. And then whether it's a small size company, large size company, that also plays into your pay that you're going to be expecting to receive. Um, I would just also add for people to think about is money is not everything. It's also you could work at a company making 200,000, but you hate your job and you want to quit every day, and you're working crazy hours and you have no family life, or you work at a smaller company, you're making 50, 60, 70 maybe. In New York, we know that's tough to live off that with a family and everything, but you are able to cut down your expenses, you have a lot of flexibility, you can spend more time with your family. People prefer that, and it depends on what phase in your career you're in. Like when I was younger, I wanted more hours and get more pay. Now, as I'm older, I have 3 kids. I'd rather have the flexibility and have less pay and more time to myself and my family, right? So it also depends on you, your personality, and where you are in your career. We only have 7 minutes left, so I wanted to make sure we ask the audience, if you guys have any other questions you want to ask us, now is the time. We are not going to be able to get through maybe all the questions, but we'll do our best to answer them. And we really want this to be interactive. We don't want to be the only ones speaking here. We want to know what you guys think, what you want to ask. And if you have questions and we're not able to get to them, or you don't want to put them into the chat now, you can email us at muslimyouthmentors@gmail.com and putting it into the chat. And we will forward the email on to Sami and Shiraz, and they can get back to you directly to answer any of your questions that you have about careers in IT as well. With that, since we're about 6 minutes left, do you guys have any closing thoughts, any topics? I know we had a broad agenda of items that we were hoping to get through, but in an hour, it's hard to get through everything, and IT is such a broad field. Is there any takeaways that you want to leave people with? Any thoughts for people interested in careers in IT, or for parents who always think like the only way to be successful is to become an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer? Any thoughts for our community that you can share with us around careers in IT? So I'll turn it over to Sami first, and then Shiraz.
Sure. I think some of the the maybe trend, like biggest trending careers or upcoming careers, like machine learning and artificial intelligence, like I mentioned, like they're leveraging that a lot more in everything to get deeper insights into user behavior and how people use apps and services. Advanced robotics. I mean, you have cloud technology, like Shiraz mentioned, like companies are cloud native. Some cloud companies are still operating data centers and working in that way. You have blockchain, you have cryptocurrency, which is like the bigger thing that people understand from blockchain. But blockchain itself is a huge technology in itself, which it kind of leads into like Web 3.0 and where the world is going and how things are going to continue changing. Virtual and augmented reality, like if anything, coronavirus and COVID has been a catalyst of changing the world a lot quicker, and companies are leveraging virtual and augmented reality a lot more now in trying to bridge teams and how they work. So I think those are some of like the bigger, maybe like again like broad career paths that people can venture down into. Um, and I think like another question like was, is it better to work for a startup or like a more established company? I think um, start like a lot of huge companies were startups in the beginning. Like you have companies that are enormous now that started with a couple of people that started something somewhere. So I think like one of the, the really great benefits of working for a startup is the incentives of stock options and starting somewhere that you could maybe start in a very like smaller role wearing many hats, but then that company continues to evolve and then you could become a director or even higher up in that company because you grew with that company from the beginning or the inception of it. So um, again, like feel free to look around, connect with people, connect with myself and Shiraz on LinkedIn or Zohib and ask questions. Like I'm a very big proponent of IT because I feel like you have like a lot of super diversity. You have a lot of acceptance of what people do. Like for where I work, we have a Muslims group where the company funds us and allows us to spend on bringing in speakers. And we have like, we've had conferences at work where we talk about Islam, we talk about Ramadan right now, especially where we have like 20, 30, 100 people in a group that are asking us questions about what it means to be a Muslim. So I think there's if it's salary you're after, you can find like people like, oh, I have to be a doctor to make a few hundred thousand. Like you could be an engineer making $1 million or close to it. So I think there's a lot of benefits in IT. You can work from anywhere. You can make your own hours. Vacation is like whatever you feel like. Spotify, for example, has 6 month parental leave, which is super lenient. So if you're a parent, you need flexibility with your kids. Like there are a lot of benefits in the tech sector versus other places.
Perfect. Thank you. And then Shiraz, you have a minute or two to share some of your thoughts.
Yeah, I would say just as a quality in IT, if you were to work in IT, I think a huge one is being open-minded and humble because I know like for me, I'm speaking from personal experience. When I went to interview for the company that I work at, I was just got my first certification and I'm like big man on campus. I'm walking around and then I go in the office and it's like 50 different like desks areas and there's like or five at least on every desk like certification just plastered like just like nothing. So that made me realize like getting a certification is a huge goal and or getting a bachelor's is a huge goal, but uh you know constantly learning, constantly evolving as the industry evolves is like a huge thing. And I know like when I work right now when I work with like some senior engineers who've been in the field for like 10, 15 years, uh, they come up to me and they say like, "Oh, I don't know that," and it's like it's really just proves that you can't know everything. It's not about being smart. It's just about putting in the work or just learning or just being open to new ideas.
Perfect. I think that's a great way to close it. It's 6:30, so we'll give the audience their time back. Thank you everybody for joining us. Next week, our topic is going to be we're going to be becoming a physician assistant, talking about that career path, what that is, what that involves, And we hope to see you guys back next week to talk about that topic. And just want to thank all of you guys for joining us, and then Shiraz and Sami for being our host today. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. And assalamu alaikum to everybody.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.